Hello, I'm Andrew Ledbetter, and I'm a professor at Texas Christian University. And today I'd like to share with you a study that I did with my colleague and friend, Corley Herbert, looking at O'Sullivan's impression management model. And the reason I'm sharing this here on video is I was supposed to share this presentation at NCA, but had a bit of a change in plans. So I still wanted to share this information with those that might find it to be useful. Certainly, if you'd like to look at the full paper, feel free to contact me at a.ledbetter@tcu.edu. I'd be happy to get a full copy of the conference paper to you. So what were we trying to do in this study? Well, I think O'Sullivan's impression management model, published back in 2000, I think it's a real gem. And I think it's a model that we haven't probably paid enough attention to over the last couple of decades. So Corley and I wanted to extend this model, particularly in the direction of understanding face concern. So the model overall tries to explain why we might choose textual channels over synchronous channels such as face-to-face. And it suggests that we do that because textual channels afford us greater control. So we can control our self-presentation more effectively. So therefore, when we want to portray a certain image, we may gravitate toward a textual channel or a mediated channel of some kind, as opposed to communicating face-to-face. So we wanted to integrate that with some of the work done by Ting Toomey and her colleagues on face management and face negotiation theory. And we also wanted to look at a couple of items within the IMM that had been theorized, but to our knowledge, not empirically examined. One of those is social skill, serving as a moderator. So those who have communication competence, greater level of communication competence, might think differently about their channel options as they pertain to face management versus those that have lower social skill. And we also wanted to look at the mediating role of net benefits. So the model suggests that we do this sort of cost-benefit analysis as we weigh our channel options. So we wanted to see if that might mediate the associations in the model. You'll get to see the model here in just a few minutes, but the overall picture of the model is that we have face concern and valence, which are key elements in the model, that then predict net benefits of channel use and then predicts likelihood of channel use with communication competence serving as a moderator. So how did we look at this? What did we do? Well, we had 715 participants, and those were drawn from a college student sample, and we asked them to think about an ongoing argument that they have had with a parent, with a specific parent, a specific conflict, and the conflicts they reported on were quite diverse. Parental workaholism, parental substance use, things having to do with the child, their health, their sleep patterns, their academics, wide variety of conflicts that were addressed by the participants in this study. So we asked them a variety of survey measures about that conflict, and then we used structural equation modeling and conditional process analysis to analyze the data that we obtained. So what did we find in the model? Well, in the model, there's a lot going on here, and I'm not going to be able to cover every single possible effect that might be of interest. Certainly, I'd love your feedback about what you think this model tells us overall. But some things that stood out to us, if I go basically by channel here, if we think about face-to-face first, we found that face-to-face was inversely predicted by other face concern, but positively predicted, inversely affected rather by both other face concern and self-face concern, but in somewhat of a different way. So other face concern, if I'm concerned about parent, if I'm a participant here, then I'm less likely to communicate face-to-face. But if I'm concerned about my own face, then I see face-to-face as less beneficial. So to be clear here, other face concern is, as I approach this conflict, whose face am I primarily concerned with? Do I want to protect my parents' face? And if that's so, I'm interested in other face concern. Do I want to protect my own face? Then that's self-face concern. And if I'm concerned about both, and really even more than both, concerned about the well-being and the appearance of the relationship, then that is mutual face concern. And here, mutual face concern did emerge as a positive predictor of likelihood and the benefits of using face-to-face communication. And really, mutual face concern kind of emerges as the star of the model overall. It exerts the most robust effects across the model. But we did also find a positive effect of valence. So valence has to do with, is the conflict positive, is the conflict negative, at least relatively positive or relatively negative. We found that relatively positive conflicts, people expressed a greater preference for face-to-face communication, at least regarding the net benefits of face-to-face communication. The phone exhibited somewhat similar effects. So we have this inverse effect of self-face concern again. We have the positive effect and the robust positive effect of mutual face concern emerging again. Other face concern, we found an effect of moderation, and I'll talk about moderation here in just a moment. Text messaging, we found really not a whole lot of effects, really no effects for face concern. We did find, as we did for the phone, mixed results for valence. So both with the phone and with texting, valence was positively associated with benefits. So the better the conflict, the more I think that those mediated channels would be beneficial. But we found an inverse effect for likelihood. Now I kind of wonder if what's going on there is if the conflict's not that bad, it's not that negative, hey, maybe, yeah, it would be beneficial to talk about it. If we needed to talk about it, those channels would work. But maybe I'm not going to bring it up because really the conflict's not that bad. We'll just kind of, not really address that because it's not a very serious concern. That might be what's going on with those effects in different directions. Okay, so what's going on then with calm competence as a moderator? Well, it is only a moderator. It did not emerge as a direct predictor in the model. But it seemed that those with higher social skill had somewhat different preferences. So for example, if those with higher social skill, there was a mutual face only positively predicted phone benefits when competence was low. So when social skill was low, those that lacked social skill tended to prefer the phone for communicating about the conflict. But those with high social skill, if they had other face concern, then they saw the phone as beneficial. So there's a lot of if-then here, right? If high social skill and interested in face concern, then this happens. So this gets kind of hard to disentangle, and I think a replication would really be needed to see if these effects hold up. So I'm a little bit hesitant to put too much weight on them, but it may suggest that there are some differences in how those with social skill versus lacking social skill might think about these things. And then we also did find a moderating effect on valence. So that valence was inversely associated with likelihood of texting when competence is high. So perhaps those that possess social skill are less keen of using the texting for conflict, particularly if the conflict is a positive one. They may not gravitate toward that. Okay, but speaking about gravitating toward texting and synchronous channels, or asynchronous channels rather, I think that is one of the takeaways of this study. So just a few takeaways to hit from you is that the IMM generally suggests that we gravitate toward textual channels because of the control they afford, but maybe that's not so much what's going on. Maybe it's instead of gravitating towards those textual and asynchronous channels. Maybe instead we tend to move away from synchronous channels like face-to-face and the phone. So maybe there's just kind of a shade of distinction there that needs to be considered. Maybe the primary effects have to do with our reaction to those synchronous channels rather than being drawn toward those asynchronous channels. The mediation and the moderation we found, so the mediation of net benefits, the moderation of communication competence, were significant. We did find effects, but do recall this is a fairly large sample with 715 participants, and the effects we found, even though they were significant, they were fairly weak. Now, one possibility why they're weak may have to do with our sample. We're looking at parent-child dyads, which we typically think of as a strong tie relationship. And thinking about Erin Ruppel's affordance utilization model, she suggests that some of these effects having to do with channels might wash out when we're looking at closer relationships. So perhaps if we looked at weaker ties, we'd find more robust effects going on. But the one robust effect, or the most robust effect that we found, was from mutual face concern. And I kind of wonder if maybe that also emerges because of the strength of the tie. When the tie is strong, when it's interdependent, as many parent-child relationships are, perhaps mutual face concern emerges to the fore as a concern. What is my channel choice going to do regarding the nature of our relationship? So those are a few implications that we are considering from this study, but I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to comment on that here on this video if you want to do that, or if you want to send a message to me again at a.ledbetter@tcu.edu. Happy to hear your feedback there and happy to get you a copy of the conference paper if you would like to read it. Thank you so much for listening to us and for hearing about our study.